Good morning. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. Today I'm going to be talking about spiritual development. And before I get into it, I just wanted to share some earlier thoughts. This morning as I was driving over here, it's the best time to have a download of thought, while you're driving the car. Not paying any attention to where you're going. I know. It's interesting to think about spiritual development, to ask yourself, when did I begin to develop myself spiritually? Did you even think about it? So that was a question that I've been asking myself. No, I really didn't realize what was happening. But now as you hear what I'm going to share this morning, you'll probably identify more with it. But two things. The first thing is I think that we unconsciously, some of us, unconsciously begin to develop our spirituality from the moment we're born. We become like little sponges where we want to discover life, we want to learn more about love, and we learn about love through our mom and dad, through our environment. We can learn about love through things that we really enjoy as little ones, playing with our dolls. I don't think I ever played with dolls, actually, but I played with my puppy and learned about love in that way. And then there are some people who just don't have that wherewithal or that beingness to recognize that this is an incarnation of development, to develop your soul. And that type of person is a person who is here to build their reputation, build their bank account, build their position of power. Their goals, in other words, are earthly goals, earthbound goals. What we want to do is to balance earth ground goals with spiritually grounded goals. That old phrase, we want to be, of the earth, but not in the earth, but what is it? I can't.
In the world, of the world.
Probably so. Of the what?
In the world, but not of
in the world, but not of the world. That's it. You got it. Thank you. And then motive. Motive is also, as we become adults, motive is really important to our striving. We can strive progressively, or we can strive to achieve this sense of position and power and find ourselves establishing goals that are simply earthbound. They may serve us well for a period of time, but at the end of that period of time, oftentimes we'll find such an individual, such a person, depressed, angry at life, not understanding why their life has led them to this position or place or in these particular relationships. And it's at that point the individual still has an opportunity to realize that they have something else in their nature to develop besides position and power and all those things that our society teaches is the purpose of life, which isn't. So there's still hope when we reach that point at the end of that time, usually when you're in your 50s and 60s, and you begin to ask yourself, what have I done with my life? Now I have a big bank account, I have a big house, I have a beautiful car, but something's missing. There's something missing in me. And usually those things that are missing are things like the virtues, like the virtue of joy, an understanding of what beauty is, that you've never even had the opportunity to taste freedom, what freedom is. What is higher freedom? We've been talking lately on our Facebook. I posted a verse from Agni Yoga, and we started talking about higher freedoms. Do we even know what higher freedom is? Higher freedom, in a very essential way, is having control over our thoughts. Provides us with the freedom that will assimilate inspiration, assimilate and respond to higher thought. That's freedom, higher freedom. So as I'm trying to develop this idea here this morning, it's to show and to give us a recognition there is such thing as called spiritual development. Now, so sometimes it's unconscious, sometimes there's nothing there. And then for the person that is developing themselves unconsciously, they will reach a point in their life, which is a very exciting point, but also very challenging point, where they take that next step in their life and they're going to work at spiritual development. So it's no longer just an inherent or natural unfolding process. Now you have a sense of direction, you have a spiritual purpose as to why you want to develop yourself spiritually. So that's where I'm taking us this morning, as to why we want to develop ourselves spiritually. And it has to do with discipline. So to develop ourselves spiritually takes discipline. Spiritual development takes discipline and a desire to bring about change. Discipline and change. Discipline and a desire to change brings a release from certain virtues and certain vices and habits and glamours and Maya. And that's what we want to change. We want to release these things from our life to be able to understand what freedom is, to be able to recognize true beauty, to feel love, to experience love. It's like I was watching a early morning program on television the other day. It was so amazing to me. And I unfortunately, I don't have names, but there was a young man, he's a golfer, and he was in the middle of the competitive tournament where he was destined to win. And he was an incredible golfer, and they were showing, this particular game where he was excelling, he was ahead of everybody. And in the middle, this is the middle of this tournament where he was going to be able to win several $1 million. So this is not just a little local golf tournament. This is a huge one. In the middle of this tournament, he got a phone call from his family that his mother had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. He immediately stopped. He didn't give it a second thought to say, well, let me finish the tournament and then I'll be there. He walked away from that tournament, walked away from the potential of earning millions of dollars. They interviewed this golfer. He was still weeping. And he talked this with such love about his mom. And I thought, well, what a gift this young man is giving to all of us about what true love is, what sacrificial love is. And the good news is that his mom survived. She's been cancer-free now for several years. The mom was there. And by this time, the anchor people and myself were all crying. It's so beautiful. That's, as we release our soul from these habits and vices and glamour and Maya, is what allows a human being to feel that kind of love, to experience and to even give that kind of love. We can just imagine being interviewed on a major television program where thousands and thousands and thousands of people, not just in your country, but all over the world, may be watching, and you're yourself. There is no falseness about this man. And when he brought his mom onto the program, you could see the love between the two of them. It was such an incredible moment. And I was so touched by it and grateful that, I was able to see it. So anyway, back to the actual discipline of spiritual development. We're told that in the beginning it takes effort and prioritizing until these disciplines are no longer considered a discipline. Now they're just a way of life. For example, meditation. We know in the beginning years of meditation, it was a discipline. We had to discipline every single day to set aside that time to meditate and then to write that paper every single day. And then we would groan about writing the paper. It was such a discipline until it has become such a part of our day-to-day life. When you hear somebody say meditation is a discipline, it's like, no, it's music to me. Meditation is like music. It's no longer a discipline, it becomes part of our life. It is natural to find light bearers developing their consciousness, expanding their consciousness through spiritual disciplines. In the Agni Yoga teaching, there is a long list of disciplines offered, just offered, not demanded, but offered to the light bearer. Disciplines that are going to direct their lives to experience and assimilate and to feel these virtues and the principles of beauty and goodness. The principle of joy. Think of joy as a principle. Freedom, prosperity, health, and success. All of these things alongside expansion of consciousness. So I took out of a list I have of, now it's become 100 and some disciplines that I keep finding, as I'm studying. It started out with 50, but now it's a lot. So I picked out 7 I wanted to share. These are just 7 disciplines that we can practice. One is to guard yourself against the harm of undisciplined thought. Guard yourself against the harm of undisciplined thought. The next is to transform the teaching into a daily necessity. See, for us, for most of us, we would not see this as a discipline. It's like when I was growing up and music was my world. There are other things besides playing with my puppy and music and I loved golf. I would go out and play golf and swimming and everything, so there's a balance there. But every day my life embraced music in some way. Now, I didn't even realize it. Back in those young years, this was a discipline. Practicing the piano, practicing the violin, listening to music, going to concerts, being exposed to great musicians and composers, all seemed to develop this young person to understand the rhythm of discipline and what it brings to you, which is joy. Can we do the same with the teaching? To transform the teaching into a daily necessity. That's a discipline. The next one is not so easy. Avoid thoughtless actions. Boy, that's a tough one, but it's a discipline for what? To direct our lives toward prosperity, toward health, toward expansion of consciousness, to better being able to assimilate the principles like beauty and goodness and joy and freedom. Avoid thoughtless action. The next one is the discipline of will. So that's the fourth one. The fifth one is to observe the extent to which your surroundings create success. Observe the extent to which your surroundings create success. Ponder on the next one, number 6, ponder on how to strengthen your friends. When people say, no, I can't share this teaching with my family, they'll think I'm crazy. This is not a crazy discipline, but it's an unusual discipline. How many people in your family or in your circle of friends ponder on how to strengthen you? Isn't that interesting idea to think about? That's why I put this on the list. Ponder on how to strengthen your friends. And the last one is one must understand the beauty of giving. Isn't that special? The great teacher then says about those who incorporate spiritual disciplines into their life, eventually what happens is that straight knowledge appears as a result of the spiritual disciplines coming together alongside the development of the heart, the unfolding process of one's heart. Just one day, you have this momentary experience of receiving straight knowledge. Then that reception increases throughout the rest of your life. This is so beautiful. In a way, this teaching is psychological, that if it is practiced, it will keep us without obsessions, without glamours, without a sense of self-importance, and will keep us all in spiritual balance. Spiritual balance is when our physical, emotional, and mental bodies are in alignment with our higher self. So in essence, our heart and mind are now in balance. So to engage in spiritual development, we can choose one of those 7 disciplines I shared. But, and this is, pardon me, I'm struggling with some wires and stuff back here, and it's driving me crazy. Yeah. Anyway, okay. This is something I found in the teaching, and I found it surprising and yet significant. is to take not just these 7 disciplines, but other spiritual disciplines that you've studied and discovered and read about in the Agni Yoga teaching, and then you have to determine which of these disciplines are going to help your striving be progressive. Does this discipline need to be put in your life at this time? This is why I believe that there are so many disciplines listed in the teaching, is because there are certain specific ones our soul needs to release itself from, the control of habits and the control of glamours and so forth. So, it is not only in simply giving these disciplines some of our time and energy, but our best time and our best energy. Isn't that profound? Our best time and our best energy. So what does this mean regarding time? Some people tell me that they are so tired by the end of the day that they don't have the energy to study, to educate themselves, to read a new book, or to pick up that book that they've been wanting to read in the teaching, but because it's still sitting on the shelf, brand new, but it's 10 years old. Say, I just can't do it. I'm too tired. I'm working so much during the day. By the time the end of the day comes, I just don't have the energy left anymore. I can't read a chapter from the teaching. I can't attend class because I'm too tired. Meditation, well, I do want to meditate, but I just don't have the time. See, we're not using these disciplines for our best time and our best energy. So what is happening when you think about the first words that I opened up with this morning is that we are now letting the material life control our life. And I guarantee you, when you get into your 50s and 60s, 70s and 100s, you're not going to be happy. You're not going to be happy being here. But if you have taken that next step and begun spiritual development, when you reach your 50s and 60s and 70s and 100s, your whole purpose of life from inside to outside will be an embodiment of the virtues of love, of joy, and the principles of beauty, goodness, and freedom, and so forth. There is a very thought-provoking Agni Yoga verse, and it's found in the book Heart, verse 97, and I'm going to read it here. After 2 weeks of apparently superficial striving, a man comes to the conclusion either that he is unfit or that the higher world does not exist. Whereas the very same man will tell his servant, after a year of service, a year is too short, I cannot give you a raise. So even in common earthly affairs, people understand the significance of time. It is difficult, however, to speak to those who have not matured in heart, or who have succeeded in extinguishing their heart. It would seem that the fires of the heart are very natural and simple in manifestation, but long periods are needed in order that this understanding, which links the lowest with the highest, may be evident in the physical world. There are very few who strive to become citizens of the universe. This title demands numerous cares. observation, vigilance, primarily an indomitable striving. Again, that's from the book Heart, verse 97. Spiritual improvement and perfection do not come overnight or in 2 weeks, nor is it even reached in a year's time. Improvement and perfection are achieved in stages, not all at once. So this is important to remember. In order to improve, striving is required, progressive striving. And in progressive striving, we are required to position our energy where it is needed the most. See, our best time, our best energy. How can this discipline be used with our best energy? Improvement must be continuous, not sporadic, or 2 days a month, or on Sundays, or once a year during Vesak, the full moon of Taurus. As spiritual students, we must strive to improve our physical, emotional, and mental bodies and their environment, and I believe on a continuous basis. Even though you think you've accomplished and attained a certain degree of perfectment, don't sabotage yourself and stay there and say, I'm done. Because life is so transitory. Events in life are so transitory. We are tested day in and day out. And if we've put this accomplishment aside and say, I'm done, believe me, you're going to be surpassed by other people, by your co-workers, by your friends, by your family, and your soul is not going to be progressing. As we improve, we must change. As we improve, for example, emotionally, we must then change our relationships. As we improve mentally, we must change or expand our creativity and our contact with the world. It's like when we're little babies, our contact with the world is mom and dad and our siblings. When we're in our 50s, our contact now should be international, as well as contact with the higher worlds. So, improvement to those upon the path of spiritual development is multifaceted. The verse that I originally read said, after 2 weeks of apparently superficial striving, a man comes to the conclusion either that he is unfit or that the higher world does not exist. This tells us that patience is the key to spiritual improvement. The verse also said, whereas the same man will tell his servant after a year of service that a year working for him is too short of a period of time to give him a raise. This tells us that even the ordinary person understands the importance of time. But in consideration of the higher order, people do not wish to know that one of the most essentials to spiritual development is not only patience, but it is also assimilation. Patience and assimilation. It's like, how often have you read a verse in the teaching? Wow, that's great. And then perhaps later in the day, what was it that I read this morning? I don't even remember what verse it was, what book. Not to mention remembering what it was that we read. That means we didn't assimilate it. So we don't have to read a whole verse. Just take a word or take one sentence and try to assimilate it. Spiritual development and improvement requires assimilation. There are 3 important parts to assimilate. To assimilate the teaching, means that you must clean out and destroy all the hindrances and obstacles which for ages and ages were built in your consciousness. This is spiritual development. See how we've progressed from the earlier part of our conversation to now what? Spiritual discipline by acceptance is, by dedication, by saying, okay, now I want to do something with my life consciously, with a sense of direction. Now I want to spiritually develop myself, and this is why it's hard work, because disciplines are involved. So this discipline is to clean out and destroy all those hindrances and obstacles which for ages and ages were built in our consciousness. For example, you want to be a great one. You want to have power in the universe. You want to bring divinity into manifestation from within yourself. That's wonderful, but you have so many accumulations of hatred and anger and fear, lots of fear. Jealousy, revenge, slander, malice, selfishness, and ego and vanity. That an important discipline to assimilating the teaching is to remove these accumulations from your mechanism. Physical, emotional, and mental mechanisms in order to assimilate higher teaching. In order to assimilate higher teaching, you have to first make room. To make room means that you're going to find ways to remove the accumulation of these icky things from your nature. In the teaching, it's called trash. It's an ugly word. Trash which has accumulated for several lifetimes. We weren't always striving to develop ourselves, nor to improve. And especially during those lifetimes where we were more busy accumulating hatred and anger and jealousy and selfishness and ego and vanity. So now we cannot expect ourselves to eradicate these things, right away. And I think those of us that are trying to put these disciplines into our life know this. It's like, oh my God, here we go again. One exercise is to assimilate, in assimilating the energy and wisdom from the teaching is this, I find this very interesting, is to take the teaching and to break it down. Take the teaching, break it down, and distribute the needed and selected disciplines within our system. So this takes some real careful thinking and planning and helping us to be more goal-fitting in our life. So it doesn't say to take the entire pages of the teaching and stuff it, into our existence. Now it means like, okay, let me look at my glamours. Let me take a look at my egotistical issues, my vanities, and then let me look in the teaching and see what disciplines I can incorporate and break down the egotism, the vanities, the glamours, the vices. So this is what it means to take the teaching and break it down and distribute the needed or selected disciplines within our system. So that's one point. Another point of the discipline is that this is interesting, is that we have to find the true teaching. To even consider this as a discipline is very curious to me. If we do not find a true teaching, we could be assimilating a new poison. The most important part to assimilating the teaching for spiritual development is to sincerely and honestly find out what is no longer worthy or good within ourselves and to throw it out. Here's a question. Ask yourself, what is it that you don't like about yourself? This is so important, especially if you have a lot of vanity in you. If you are worshiping yourself, worshiping your vanity. If you are worshiping the vanity within you, there is no hope for you. If you are devoted to your vanity, if you believe you must strengthen your ego, then the teaching is not for you. Even if you desire spiritual development. This is why vanity and ego will make you totally blind. You don't want to be blind when you reach the age of 50 or 60 or 70 or in the hundreds. You don't want to be blind because now your life is over. It's over because you don't have the sense of joy. You haven't experienced freedom. You haven't taken that love that has been given to you and assimilated it into your whole body so that nothing can put you under. Vanity and ego will make you totally blind. But if you can see things within you that you want to change, now is the time to do it. Just do it. Now. So get started now. As you begin to change yourself and strive to create a new rhythm in your life, you will slowly, slowly now have room for this great teaching that will be distributed throughout your whole system. A distribution which will occur because your physical, emotional, and mental bodies will be ready to assimilate them. The goal of the discipline of assimilation is to be a healthy human being. Isn't that interesting? Healthy physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. To be healthy means to remove all contradictory activities from your body in order to make it harmonious and progressive. You must have an activity that is harmonious and progressive. You must have an activity in your life that is harmonious and progressive to be healthy. That's striving. But the teaching says if it is not progressive, if your discipline is not progressive, then you can be a harmonious corpse. The discipline of assimilation requires change. It requires cleansing. For example, our minds need cleansing. Our character is full of things that are not good for us. When we see these things, our light then increases. As our light increases, we will find such ugly things that you will be startled. I remember many years ago a spiritual teacher who was almost blind. Each time I would visit his house, it would be so dirty, and yet he didn't seem to mind. I would do his dishes for him, and I'd clean his kitchen, and he would be grateful, but he never saw the piles of dust that had accumulated for such a long time. And the mildew. This was in Florida, so there was a lot of mildew, and if you've been around mildew, it's suffocating. You breathe it in. If I would visit him in the late afternoon or early evening and turned on the light would reflect on the dust and mildew. And I could not pretend the years of accumulated dirt were not there. And I thought, how can you be a spiritual teacher? Well, he had cataracts, so he couldn't see worth a darn. Anyway, But nonetheless, you don't have the seed to know you're going to have dust in your house. You've got to dust. You've got to get rid of that dust. It is much the same way when our inner light increases. It places a focus on the areas in our nature, in our personality life that needs the most immediate cleansing. We are blind like to so much dirt that is within our nature, but as our light increases, it cannot be missed. As our light increases, we find there are some obnoxious things in our nature more than we ever thought possible. But the light, the fire, gives us an opportunity to make change. Our present life reflects what we were in our past. Our present life reflects what we were in our past. If you want to know about your past, look at your present life, your present body, your emotional body, your mental body, and you will see where you need to take a shower to bring greater, more beautiful things into your nature. So, okay, someone hurt you. They hurt me 1,000,000 times. They just keep hurting and hurting and hurting me. But I'm not going to sit and worry about the hurt. Nor are you. Do something to clean those hurts out and get rid of them. And I think I may have to stop here. I had such a very long talk this morning. Let me do this, because I thought this is interesting to think about the becoming a citizen of the universe. It's in that verse. Most of the people, 80% of them, are stuck in their body. They can't begin to think about becoming a citizen of the universe. It's not in their thought process. Another high percentage is stuck in their family life. Another large percent is stuck in their nation and their country. But very few people think about being a member of the universe, a citizen of the universe, which means that the universe is their family. If you're on Facebook, you've been inundated with so much information about the fires taking place in Australia. The beauty is all the thousands of people that are rendering help. The firefighters in this country going to Australia. I was listening to a firefighter in California saying, this is just who we are. We're not doing something heroic. This is who we are. Just like the Australian firefighters have come over to California when California was burning. That's becoming a citizen of the universe. How do such citizens of the universe act in all-inclusive ways, in peace, in compassion and love, and in breaking through their obstacles and touching the core in themselves, the core in which the universe exists? So spiritual improvement requires that we dedicate our life in such a way that eventually we become a fully bloomed flower, a chalice.